So now we've collected all of these values and they're available in our actual code now. The next step is going to configure our script so that it performs the math so that when the user enters in the various numbers of the items that they want, it will estimate our total. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable called estimate. And I'm going to start by just taking each of these bottle values and multiplying them by their prices. And I'm just going to delete my console logs since I don't need those anymore. So we have a new variable called estimate. We're going to take each of our variables that is getting the value of the entered number of infused water bottles that the person has ordered, and then we're multiplying it by the price of that particular type of water. So this one is $10, this one's $8, and this one's $10. And when we write JavaScript, the asterisk indicates multiplication. You don't use the X for times, you use the asterisk. Once it's multiplied the price by the number that has been entered into the text field, it will do the multiplication first, and then it's going to add these numbers together. Now what we're going to do to see that this is working is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the ID on that input field that is going to display the actual estimate. So we're calling this text estimate. I'm going to do a get element by ID, I'm going to get text estimate, and I'm going to set its value to whatever the value of estimate is. So if we save now and go look at this in our browser, and I enter in some numbers, and I click estimate, you can see that it's adding up the totals for these bottles. So 10 plus 8 plus 10 is 28. So that seems to be working fine. If we change these numbers and re-hit estimate, the math that it's performing is working in the manner that we would want. Now we've retrieved the amount of bottles that the user wants and multiplied it by the price, and we're populating this field. Now we need to deal with the taxes. So the way that I'm going to figure out what the tax factor is we're going to use a value and calculate the tax factor. So according to our tax fee, the only state in which we're charging taxes is California. The rest of the states don't have a tax fee associated with them. So California has a tax fee of 7.5%. So let's go ahead and let's add in our taxes. And I'm going to put this information above the estimate since it just logically makes more sense. So I'll make a little comment here that this is going to be my taxes, and we're going to set up a variable, and we'll call our variable tax factor. And we're going to set the tax factor variable equal to 1. Since most of our states don't charge tax at all, we're just going to leave this as 1, so it will just multiply by 1, which is going to give the value whatever the normal amount is going to be. But then if it's California, we need to reset the tax factor and do something else. So how do we first of all know that the state is California? Well, because we're collecting that information in our HTML, when they select California, we have the value of CA that's being applied to that particular item. We can use that in order to create our tax configuration. So I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to pass on state, and we'll go ahead and put the 3 equal signs, and in single quotes I'm going to put CA. So we're just saying if state is set to CA, so if the state is California, then we're going to execute some code here, and we're going to change the tax factor to be equal to 1.075. So that's going to set the California tax to 1.075. So now I know what the tax factor is. Let's move on and figure out what the shipping costs are going to be. We already have a variable called shipping method, and it's going to be one of these values. It'll either be the pickup option, which is free, US mail, which is 2, or UPS, which is $3 per bottle. And if we look in our code, these have values of USPS, pickup, and UPS. So we're going to use those value names in our code as well. Let's make a comment and just put that this is shipping. And then what we'll do is we'll create a variable and we'll call it shipping costs per. So shipping costs per item is what we're going to set this to. We're going to initially set this equal to 0. So we want to start off with nothing. Now what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you how to create a switch. A switch block looks a lot like an if block, but instead I'm going to put in a variable that I'm going to check multiple times. In this case it's going to be shipping method. And the switch is always followed by cases. So let me show you what this looks like. We'll start by defining the switch as being shipping method. And then inside the curly braces, we're going to specify case. And then inside of single quotes, I'm going to put the name of the value. We'll start with pickup. And then you're going to put a colon. And then we'll put shipping cost per, which is the name of this variable, is equal to, and here we'll put 0 for the first one. And then I'm going to terminate this case by a break. So if the shipping method is pickup, we'll set the shipping cost to 0. And I'm just going to copy this. With switch statements you can simply just copy them, and we'll change this to USPS. And the shipping cost for mail is going to be $2 per bottle. And then finally we'll paste that in one more time, and we'll change this to UPS, and the shipping cost for UPS is going to be $3 a bottle. So this is not actual my total shipping cost. This is just the shipping cost that I'm going to need per bottle. So to figure out the shipping costs, I need to total up the number of bottles and then multiply it by my shipping costs per bottle. So I'm going to create a new variable called shipping cost. And my shipping cost variable is going to be equal to the value of water, orange raspberry, water cucumber, mint, and water strawberry and basil times the shipping cost per. So we're just simply adding these up and then multiplying them by the shipping cost per, because we're charging a flat fee per bottle. So it's just going to find out how many bottles were ordered and multiply that by the shipping cost. So now we're going to create another variable called subtotal, and the variable called subtotal is going to be all the stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to specify that we want, and I'll actually just copy this, and then in parentheses I'm going to paste in the number of bottles times their price, and then we're going to multiply that once we get the total value of all of those multiplied and added together. We're going to multiply that by the tax factor, and then the final estimate should be the shipping cost added to the subtotal. So we'll go ahead and make one more variable that's going to add that in, and then the final estimate should be the shipping cost multiplied by the subtotal. So we'll change our variable of estimate here, and we will have this simply be equal to the value of subtotal plus the shipping costs. If we save our page and go into the browser and refresh, and I like to have my developer tools open just to make sure I don't have any errors. This is a good place to look initially to see if you have any errors. Looks like we don't, which is great. So I'll just add in one of each of my bottles, and I'll select a state, and we'll just use pickup for free. So if we add this in, you can see that we're getting a value of 28, which is correct. Let's change this to the California and retotal our estimate. You can see that it is performing the math, but it's also giving us a number that probably isn't very usable. We want the number to be rounded, so we'll deal with that in just a minute. Let's also try to change our shipping method. So if I change our shipping method, that should have just added $6, but you can see that it's changed the whole thing. So this is clearly wrong. What we're running into here is a situation where something is kind of broken. When these values come in from these fields, they're strings of data, and when you use the plus operator on a string, you concatenate them together. So that's that is that you squish them together. So instead of being 1 plus 1 plus 1, or 3, it's 1, 1, 1, which is not particularly helpful for our situation. So we're going to have to fix that next, but for now, we know that we're collecting all of the values and we're generally on the right track. We just need to make sure that all these types are correct. So we'll deal with that in the next lesson.